The Labour Party. They're pledging to recognise the Palestinian state if they get the keys to number 10.
Yes, ahead of finalising the party's manifesto, the opposition leader Sir Keir Starmer says it's very important we have a viable Palestinian state alongside a safe and secure Israel. But the question that many people will be asking is now the time to say that there should be a Palestinian state? And in some ways, would that be rewarding the horrors that we saw on October the 7th?
Yes, is it jumping the gun a bit, Tom?
Well, joining us now is the Shadow Paymaster General, Jonathan Ashworth. And Jonathan, I want to start with that question. Is it not galling at this moment in time, in the midst of an active war, to start talking about rewarding Hamas terrorists?
Well, first of all, our manifesto is not published, and you'll have to wait for the final wording of the manifesto, of course, and you wouldn't expect me to comment on newspaper speculation about the contents of a document which has not been published. So let me make a broader point. The war that we've seen in Gaza is horrific. We need those hostages freed, absolutely, as soon as possible, straight away, now. We need an immediate and lasting ceasefire to bring this horrific war to an end. We need the humanitarian assistance to get into Gaza. But ultimately, we do need to work towards peace, and that involves a viable, independent Palestinian state alongside a secure Israel. And the right to statehood is the inalienable right of the Palestinians. It is not a gift of a neighbour. It is the right of the Palestinian people. And that's actually a position that Keir Starmer has outlined some months ago. It's a position that I've spoken about for some years. Indeed, I've voted in Parliament to recognise a Palestinian state. And in fact, the only motion that passed Parliament calling for a ceasefire, the motion that passed Parliament in February, made clear our support for a viable, independent Palestinian state alongside a secure Israel as part of a two-state solution.
Of course, I think any right-thinking is almost, I think, the settled will of most parties that eventually, of course, we'd like to see a two-state solution. The question is one of timing. The question is one of appropriateness. In the midst of what is an awful war, might this not be seen as encouraging some of the terrorist action that we've seen? I want to ask you a specific question, because I don't want to talk about a policy that has not yet been published. We're expecting your manifesto next Thursday. What did you make of the decision of the Taoiseach of Ireland to unilaterally recognise Palestine at this moment?
Well, these are matters for individual countries around the world, and of course other countries have also made similar statements around recognition, but it's a matter for those countries. I'm hoping to serve in a Labour government in a few weeks' time. We have to win the trust of the British people, and I think our friends in other countries would look rather askance at us if we were passing comment on policy decisions of other countries. That is a matter for the Irish in the same way it's a matter for other countries who've made their position clear.
OK, Jonathan, we've seen your announcement today about a new Freedom to Buy scheme. Wondering how it's different from the government's Help to Buy scheme?
Well, of course, the government scheme is coming to an end, and we think it's important that that support is there, particularly for young people for whom too often the dream of home ownership they have been locked out of. And when we face a generation of renters, people perhaps renting well into their 50s or even 60s because of the way in which things have developed. Of course, the other things we want to do is planning reform. We want to be building houses. We've seen planning reform too often blocked in Parliament. Too often those who say, even if they don't appreciate the label, perhaps adhere to the behaviour of those who say not in my backyard, win the debate.
So essentially this scheme is a continuation of what is currently in place, because quite a few people are getting in touch today worrying that the taxpayer may be liable for some rather risky mortgages. So mortgages with just a 5% deposit. What happens if those people who've taken out those mortgages can no longer pay their mortgage payments? What happens then?
Well, we think this is an important scheme, and I wouldn't characterise it in those terms. I think the key thing here is saying to young people that the dream of home ownership need not be crushed. That we want you to get on the housing ladder. I want to see more people own their homes in this country. Actually, Labour is now the party of home ownership in this country. And I don't believe that the worries that your viewers perhaps have expressed to you in those terms will turn out to be, I think they'll be unfounded in the end. I think it is important that we help young people on the housing ladder. It's good for those young people. It's good for the economy as well if people own their own homes. And of course we think it is one of the reforms, one of the microeconomic reforms, which we think can also contribute to getting growth motoring in this country.
Jonathan, you talk about this policy alongside your planning reform as if they're two policies that go together. Yeah. And I think a lot of economists would say planning reform is desperately needed, and it's so encouraging to hear your party leader talking about himself as a YIMBY, a yes in my backyard sort of person. A lot of economists would say that is good for growth. But if you're going to build lots of houses, make it easier for lots of houses to be built, and that might well, with a big supply boost, bring down the price of houses. If at the same time you have subsidised lots of people with risky 5% mortgages, and the value of the asset that they have bought with just 5% deposits then drops, those people are in negative equity due to your other half of this policy, and the taxpayer is on the hook.
Well, I don't think it'll actually work out that way. Although I know you are a real expert on this. I don't say that with any sense of sarcasm, not at all. I know you're an expert on this because I know you tweet about this quite a lot. This is one of your policy, things that you're really into. So I know when you talk on these things, you do speak with some authority, Tom. But I don't think that will be the consequence of this policy. I think getting people on the housing ladder, building more houses, will be good for this country. It will be good for the economy. Our lack of house building in this country is one of the reasons why.
Yeah, I mean, it's basic economics, though, isn't it? It's basic economics. If you stoke demand without the supply there's going to be problems, aren't there?
Well, at the moment, of course, you've got people who cannot get on the housing ladder at all, and that is a problem, and that contributes to the economic doldrums the country has been in for the last 14 years or so. So I don't think that it will be, I don't accept, rather, it would be inflationary in the way in which you are suggesting.
Now, of course, planning isn't just about housing. It's also about all sorts of other things. It's about energy infrastructure. It's even about new film studios. And I don't know if you've seen this one in Buckinghamshire. The Conservative candidate for one of the constituencies there has been cheering the fact that a film studio has been blocked by the local council. James Cameron was saying this film studio should be built. It was in a disused quarry, what Labour might describe as the grey
started,
belt.
Jonathan.
What I'm asking is, would the Labour Party make it easier?
Where is this going?
Would the Labour Party make it easier for this film studio that has been blocked by the local council to actually get built? Because this is all about getting back to growth.
I'm not aware of this particular story. I thought you were perhaps going to go to a package so I could get some more information on it, so I have my glasses ready to watch it. So, what is it? Is it the modern incarnation of Pinewood Studios?
Yeah, it's a big new super studio that was going to be constructed. Sorry you haven't seen the story. I kind of rather sprung this on you. But
basically, will you make it easier for studios to be built, even if local councils object?
I think we need the next generation of those great carry-on films that were made at Pinewood. So yes, I would love to see a new film studio. No doubt you're going to spring on me now that there is some local Labour politician who opposed it,
honestly,
no doubt. Presumably that's where... Is that where this is going?
We're not playing games here, Jonathan Ashworth. I'm just a curious journalist after some positive pro-growth reform. Just a hobby horse of mine, nothing more than that. Jonathan Ashworth, that's all we have time for, but thank you so much for joining us.